Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 9th of February. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information from the National Weather Service. It's free, it's online, and it's available 24 hours a day. And a lot of different ways you can get that. We have the Alaska Weather Information Line, 800-472-0391. We've got the websites, weather.gov/Alaska. If you just start at weather.gov, because that's easier to remember, you can do that. Just click on Alaska, and every click will get you a little bit closer to home. If you want to start closer to home, use weather.gov/Fairbanks, weather.gov/Anchorage, or weather.gov/Juneau. If you've got questions about any of that, email us anytime. We'd love to help you out, and we've helped out probably several of your friends. Ask them. nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. Now, we're on social media as well. A lot of the time, you'll find updates from Juneau, Fairbanks, and the Anchorage areas with weather information about the upcoming temperatures, or perhaps snow amounts that are coming through your area, or perhaps an upcoming storm like what you'll find from southeastern Alaska and Juneau as you head into tonight and tomorrow. If you want to find us on Twitter, that's a great way to report your snow and let us know what you're seeing in your area, as well as find information from all of those weather forecast offices. Use the hashtag AKwx, which is short for Alaska Weather, and that's a good way to continue the conversation with us, even if you're not talking directly to the National Weather Service. So it helps a lot, and it helps everyone else, there you go, in your community. So we appreciate that. Here's a look at the snow forecast for Southeast. We've got a lot going on all the way around the Gulf Coast communities as we go in through tonight and really into the rest of the weekend, and not to leave out the rest of Alaska, but this is where most of the snow is going to be. So let's start in Southeast. As you look at the colors here on the left, I want you to focus on this deep blue, the yellow, and the orange. Let's see if we can find those colors there right here around the central and northern parts of Southeast. Now, a lot of what you see with the pink colors, because that looks really crazy, right? It looks like a lot of snow. A lot of this is higher terrain, so not a lot of folks are living up here on top of the mountains. However, right down below at the coast, of course, we're looking at snowfall totals that could ramp up into the 8 to 12, even 12 to 15-inch range there, and some of that will be over the Hyder region. But let's start up north. First, we have areas around Haines and Skagway, stretching to around Juneau, that could see on the order of about 10 to 15 inches of snow above 1,000 feet. Below that, it's probably going to be more like 4 to 8. A winter storm watch is posted for the northern parts of Southeast as we go into tomorrow and into Saturday morning. South of that, a winter weather advisory is posted for many of the central and southern communities in Southeast, and you're still looking at a decent amount of snow. Some places like Hoonah, Gustavus, so you're probably talking about 5 to 10 inches here. As you move further southward, though, those numbers start to fall off to more of a 3 to 5 inch range, or even a 5 to 9 inch range. So it's going to snow in Southeast. The question is how much in your community. Right now, it does look like a much better opportunity for heavier snowfall across northern parts of Southeast, but let's not forget about our friends in Yakutat. Yakutat could get just a whopping snowfall here. Looking at places there, it could see probably another 10 to 15 inches of snow in that region as well. So it's going to be snowy across the northern parts of the Gulf Coast, northern parts of Southeast as we go into tonight, tomorrow, and then into Saturday. It does look like there may be a little bit of a lull, and then it'll kick back in as we head through tonight and tomorrow. All this region, again, under a winter storm or winter weather advisory, and the areas shaded in yellow, areas shaded in orange will be under a winter storm watch, where we could see some of that heavier snow. Of course, Yakutat gets a special exception because you get a lot of snow a lot of the time anyway, so you have to get a lot of snow for that to be a winter storm warning, of course. The orange shaded area across the Portage Valley, west and Whittier and through the tunnel, that is a blizzard watch at this point. We're expecting to see gusts there reaching up to about 45 to 50 miles per hour at this point, and it looks like there could be 5 to 9 inches of snow, and that will make travel tricky if you're moving through there between tonight, About 3 o'clock in the morning is when we expect to see those winds really coming up, but anytime through the rest of this evening and into tomorrow morning, we could have blizzard conditions in the region. So plan on poor visibility and driving conditions if you're going back and forth from Anchorage to Girdwood to Whittier and through the Portage Valley. Driving will not be a lot of fun, and it might be pretty dangerous, so just be careful there. It looks like conditions will ease up as we get into early Saturday morning. Let's travel northward now, and a lot of the north slope all the way from the Kobuk and Noatak valleys and the Brooks Range and up across the coastal plain to the Beaufort Seacoast and the Chukchi Coast and areas around Cape Espenberg and Shishmaref and the northern Seward Peninsula, all lit up in yellow. That is a wind chill advisory, and it is going to be cold. A little bit of wind, a lot of cold. Put that all together, and it could feel like anywhere from 45 to 55 below as we go through tonight and into Saturday morning. So plan on some serious cold there, and enough so that just a few minutes outside and with exposed flesh could freeze your skin very easily. So just be very careful out there and make sure you're limiting your outdoor exposure. Make sure the little ones are covered up just right, and you're taking care of your older friends and neighbors there. You look out across the Kuskokwim Delta, also have a wind chill advisory there. Looks like wind chills won't be quite as brutal, but cold enough, talking about 35 to 45 below across the Kuskokwim Delta with just a little bit of a northerly breeze, a light breeze, but a lot of cold again for you. So all the areas in the north, Seward Peninsula, Kuskokwim Delta, looking at some big time cold, wind chill advisory there. Now, on to the weather at hand. The satellite picture really helps tell the story today. You can see low pressure spinning up right here across the northern and central Gulf. As we were talking about yesterday, in the upper levels of the atmosphere, we have the polar jet stream that's been located up, well, across the pole, is dropping southward. It is connecting with the subtropical jet stream, and that is helping to bring that moisture into the Gulf of Alaska. Well, that is spinning up this zone of low pressure right here, and as that powers up, it's been sloshing snow over into the Kenai Peninsula today, into south central, the Matanuska and Susitna valleys, and it's gearing up to really focus its efforts here on southeast. That has previously, for most of the week, had a pretty dry and relatively calm week. Breezy, but no, not so bad, right? It's about to change for you. So everybody that saw sunshine today, clouds are moving in fairly quickly. A look up north shows that we can see that band of clouds dropping southward. That is the jet stream there. That's what's making those clouds, and you can see that delineation there dropping southward. On top of that, there is a northerly flow coming in right behind a surface front that is going to work its way all the way down the west coast as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. Out across the chain, southerly flow is dominating the central and eastern chain. That south and southeasterly flow for places like Unalaska and Dutch Harbor out towards Sandpoint has been bringing moisture into cold, and no doubt you'll see occasional poor visibility, periods of rain mixed with snow, and that trend should continue through a large part of the weekend. Here is the surface chart. Low pressure across the northern Gulf, around 989 millibars. This is going to join forces eventually and just kind of sit here and spin around itself across the northern Gulf. Well, if you're in southeast, you just have to look a little bit further to the west and you can see what's coming your way. Here's a ridge of high pressure that's getting out of the way, but you see all the clouds building up here. This is working its way eastward. Got a lot of dry air in place now, but this is going to move a little bit further east and push that moisture and that cold and that snow into a good chunk of central and northern parts of southeast, and in some cases a little bit further south as well. Around Prince William Sound, the Copper River Basin, the Kenai Peninsula today. We've seen snow in many locations. It looks like that will continue around the Anchorage area as well overnight. For the Alaska Peninsula, a little bit of an onshore flow coming in from the Bering, so snow has been falling in that region. And snow showers across the YK Delta and into the lower and middle Yukon Valley, even Fort Yukon seeing some snow showers earlier today. And that seems to be falling off up north, but we still have a decent onshore flow for the Arctic coast, and areas of poor visibility were showing up across the Beaufort Seacoast. Meanwhile, another front sitting down to the south, and again ahead of that is that south and easterly flow. Didn't see a whole lot of reports of precipitation for the chain, but certainly looked like it was possible. So tonight, rain and snow will be possible in the chain. Low pressure again combining forces here across the northern and eastern Gulf, hovering around 978, 979 millibars. You can see, even with an untrained eye, that these lines of constant pressure represented with those black circles around low pressure there are kind of closing in on each other. And if you watch the show enough, I like to say that those lines, the more you see, the windier it's going to be. And certainly that's the case tonight as those winds start to pack in over southeast. The winds will be coming up in your area and also around Prince William Sound and the Portage Valley. So no wonder we're going to have a blizzard setup anyway across the Portage Valley. It's a blizzard watch at this point. If it starts to look like it is happening, we'll call that a warning. Across the interior, snow will be falling around the Alaska Range and northward into the Tanana Valley and points east. And another wave is trying to work its way through the North Slope. With that, a few flurries, light snow, and probably some poor visibility as high pressure builds in across the Gulf of Anadyr. That'll hover out across the west for Friday and maintain some spotty areas of snow showers on the south side. The front lingers close to the central chain. It never really seems to cross over. And low pressure hovers around the northern Gulf Coast at 976 millibars, deepening, in fact, through the day on Friday. Meanwhile, moisture has moved into southeast. You can see there's going to be a very sharp line between mostly rain, a lot of that on the outer coast, and snow showers, and heavier amounts of snow across northern parts of southeast, and certainly in Prince William Sound and parts of the Cook Inlet and the Middle Tanana Valley and eastward. Snow showers will be found across the North Slope, and as we get into Saturday, drier conditions start to work their way into south central and southwest. You can see a wealth of clouds, but also some breaks in that. Snow showers through the Bering Strait and the North Slope. And then we get back into a wetter pattern for the central and southern parts of southeast. Up north, snow continues around Haines and Skagway, and Juneau will be right there on that line. So I'd lean towards snow and out toward Yakutat and into Prince William Sound as snowfall will continue there as well. So wind, winter weather, cold, you've got it all. It's like we're still in the winter season around Alaska, wouldn't you say? So hold on to your hats. Temperature-wise, across southeast today, 20s and 30s. It looks like Skagway made it up to 19 today. Haines was about 23. 33 for Cordova, 24 in Valdez. It was 20 in Anchorage, 26 for Talkeetna. Homer had 27. 0 on the button there for Fairbanks and Eagle, while Northway and Tok were a little bit closer to 5 below. Fort Yukon was 9 below. Kaktovik 14 below. Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse saw temps around 25 to 30 below today. 20 below in Barrow, 14 below for our friends in Kivalina. Shishmaref only 2 below, but 2 above in Nome. St. Lawrence Island and Gamble 9 above, 2 above in McGrath. And as you get out towards southwest, Sparivon, Russian Mission, even Bethel, anywhere from 5 above to almost 10 below in some cases. Teens and 20s for the Bristol Bay communities. Looks like King Salmon was 13 today. Down toward Pilot Point and down the coast, teens and low to mid-20s there. Sandpoint was 27. On Alaska and Dutch Harbor, 31. The Pribilof was in the lower 20s. And gosh, look at Atka, almost 50 degrees this afternoon with that south and southeast wind. Meanwhile, friends out at Attu, hello everybody, 37 degrees this afternoon. South Central, you're looking at temps around 0 again tonight, even as the snow moves out, colder air is moving in. Across the west coast, 10 to 20 below, including Bethel at 20 below, almost 20 below for Nome. Kotzebue Sound temperatures 15 to 20 below. The North Slope looking at 25 to 35 below. These are actual temperatures, not wind chill values now. 24 below in Fort Yukon, down the Parks Highway, anywhere from 3 to 20 below as you head up toward Healy. Southeast, 20s and 30s. You're saying, where's the cold? Yeah, it's on the way. High temperatures as you get into your Friday, lower to mid-30s for many in southeast. Most areas from the central and northern parts of southeast and probably many of the interchannel communities will be below freezing as we get into the afternoon tomorrow, helping to set the stage for the potential of snow. Single digits and teens for Prince William Sound and the Kenai Peninsula, 19 in Kodiak. Middle Tanana Valley folks around North Pole and Fairbanks, anywhere from 10 to 15 below at least. 10 below around Eagle, 17 below for Fort Yukon, and 10 to 25 below for the North Coast, as well as the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast, where it will be the coldest for you. Kotzebue Sound temperatures anywhere from 5 to 15 below, about 12 below in Kotzebue, 5 below in Nome, McGrath, 14 below. Galena's got you beat at 18 below. Bethel, certainly cold at 16 below. Bristol Bay, just a hair below 0. And the Alaska Peninsula, anywhere from the mid-teens to mid-20s. Kodiak 17, St. Paul 17, and 30s. Above freezing for the central and western chain, 40 in Attu. Flying weather now. IFR conditions across a large part of the eastern interior, the southeastern coast, the North Slope, and out across the west, with MVFR still holding in the west. Look for some improvements across the Alaska Range in the west, with IFR lingering across the Kenai Peninsula, the northern and eastern Gulf Coast, and increasing across the northern parts of southeast and lingering across the Arctic coast throughout the day. Here's your pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, we expect to hold on to MVFR through a large part of the day. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass right now, visibility and ceilings look pretty good. VFR there, and looking for that to happen in Rainy Pass on your Friday. Windy Pass, we expect to see MVFR developing, but a start at IFR should be expected, and the same goes for Isabel Pass. Ventasta Pass, we expect to see instrument flight rule through most of the day, and Tanita Pass will probably be about the same. Snow will be in the area. Portage Pass, well, we've already talked about the blizzard watch that's in effect. Watch for low ceilings, gusty conditions, and poor visibility throughout the day. We're going to call that IFR. Chilkoot and White Pass also worsening conditions, ceiling visibility, and snow. Plan on worsening flying conditions as you go through the daytime there tomorrow. Surface freezing lines dropping southward across the eastern Gulf now and across Kodiak Island in the Alaska Peninsula. Where's the warm? Way out across the central and western chain at this point. Most of the mainland there is below freezing to start for your daytime tomorrow. Icing potential, it's certainly there. We're going to see that linger across the northern and eastern Gulf Coast, at least above 5,000 feet to start tomorrow. Levels will probably be dropping as low pressure starts to work its way out, but that could be toward the end of the weekend. 3,000 feet and below, you'll find at least some light to isolated moderate wrapped into that upper level disturbance across the Arctic coast and into parts of Norton Sound. And then just south of the Aleutians below 4,000 feet, there's a lot of moisture and warmer air there, but you'll have to go a little bit higher to find it. The jet stream shows that polar jet has now dropped southward by tomorrow, looking at 50 to 60 knot winds along the west coast from the north, and where these bands join together across the Gulf is where we're going to find that low pressure system in the Gulf power up. And that's one of the reasons that southeast is going to get a lot more active weather as we get into the weekend. At 9,000 feet, low pressure tomorrow, sitting right over the Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet. Northerlies in the west coast, westerlies across the Gulf and into southeast at about 35 knots. And the interior winds, well, they'll be switching around. Look for more of a north and easterly flow to take over the central and western interior as we go throughout the weekend. North and easterly winds already there at 3,000 feet, 35 to 45 knots there. The northerlies continue into the Bristol Bay region, 35 to 40. Westerlies across the Gulf and into southeast at 25 to 30. And across the chain, look for easterlies, 30 to 35 at 3,000 feet tomorrow. Turbulence, that will be increasing and worsening as well for parts of the northern and eastern Gulf Coast below 6,000 feet. Watch for expanding areas of light to occasional moderate. And across the southwest coast below 4,000 feet, watch for chop around the Killbucks and the Wood River Mountains out across the Alaska Peninsula and into the central and western chain, also below 4,000 feet. Watch for some light turbulence across the western Brooks Range and the southern half of the Seward Peninsula into the Bering Strait. That's a look at your aviation forecast. After Stargazers, we'll take a look at your marine weather forecast. Stay tuned.
Constellations everywhere.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regis, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
Hey Dehne, we have something special to talk about this week.
What would that be? Another planetary close encounter, or perhaps an eclipse?
Well, none of those actually. A viewer of our show visited my planetarium a while back, and they asked me this question: where did all these constellations come from? I thought that would be a great theme for this week's show.
You're absolutely right. We talk about constellations every week, but where did they all come from and who invented them?
Let's show you. For thousands of years, our ancestors have looked up at the night sky and wondered what it all was. Even as recently as 100 years ago, before the proliferation of streetlights, if you went outside on a clear moonless night, you could see thousands of stars right from your backyard.
Without a scientific understanding of what the stars actually were, many ancient cultures thought the stars were divine. Each star was considered a god, fixed in position relative to the others, appearing to rise in the east and set in the west night after night.
Imagine how magical, mysterious, and awesome the heavens must have seemed to our ancestors. As a person went from youth to old age, they would see the same stars in the same locations year after year, the same at age 5 as at age 50. And the sky seemed so high above them that the stars were unreachable, as if they were attached to the inside of a large crystalline sphere with us at the center.
And this sphere would appear to rotate around the Earth again, with us at the center, making the stars appear to rise in the east and set in the west. This repetitive motion of the stars was very predictable, so many ancient people used the night sky as a primitive clock.
That's right, because not only was the daily motion of the stars repetitive, but over the course of a year, the stars you could see would gradually change. However, 365 days later, the same stars you saw a year ago would reappear in the same place. So if you look up at the stars after sunset on your birthday, you'll see the same stars in the same place every birthday for as long as you live. The human brain likes to make order out of chaos. Although the distribution of the stars in the night sky is random, your brain immediately wants to make patterns out of the brightest stars. So, as our ancestors spent their evenings gazing at the stars, they would play a game of celestial connect the dots, making patterns, both big and small, that represented objects, animals, or people. We call these patterns constellations.
There are 88 officially recognized constellations in modern astronomy. Which constellations you can see is dependent on where on the Earth you're observing. For example, people who live in Australia can see some of the same stars that we can see from North America, but not all of them, and vice versa. Australians can see the Southern Cross, but only a few of us in North America can. North Americans can see Ursa Major, the Great Bear, but New Zealanders cannot. The only places on Earth where you can actually see all 88 constellations is at the equator.
So, as people around the world played connect the dots with the stars, they would create fanciful stories about each of the constellations they created. Many of these stories were used to pass down cultural values of morality or tell stories about love, courage, or honor.
Many of the stories of these constellations were handed down from generation to generation by word of mouth. Sadly, because we have so many streetlights today, many of the fainter stars are invisible from where most people live. Therefore, we have gotten out of the habit of creating new stories and new star patterns.
So, the next time you go out camping, do as Jack Horkheimer often said, make the stars your own. Who knows, you might be the first person to create the constellation of the smartphone. Keep looking up.
Here's a quick check of your ice edge. The ice edge is still about 130 to 150 nautical miles northeast of St. Paul. However, it's about 30 to 50 nautical miles northeast of St. Matthew if you're keeping track. And of course, strips of that higher concentration ice are moving out and away from that leading edge. It's being moved southward and growing. However, we're seeing polynyas develop in the eastern parts of Norton Sound, west of St. Lawrence Island, west of Seward Peninsula, and in northeastern sections of Kotzebue Sound as the ice is being pulled away from the coast. So a lot of interesting things going on there. In southeast, southeasterly winds will be picking up across the central and southern chain, 20 to 25 with 6-foot seas there. Holding out to light winds tomorrow across the Lynn Canal. Out across the outer coast, a different story. Southerlies north of Cross Sound, 25 knots there, with westerlies onshore south of Sitka, 30 knots with 13 to 15-foot seas, and higher gusts will be developing through Friday and into Saturday, with some gusts coming up to 45 knots in many locations, maybe even 55 across the outer coast. West and southwesterlies between 35 and 40 knots, seas up to 22 feet, and across the inner channels 35 knots with a 7 to 8-foot sea throughout the day on Saturday. Conditions will be worsening as you go. Across south central northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound to 20 knots, 30 to 40 knots across the north and western Gulf Coast with 11 to 15-foot seas. Some of the roughest weather will be right around the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay and just outside, with 20-foot seas west of the Barrens, and again strong gales and even storm force winds coming up to 50 knots there. 20-foot seas really subside though as you go into Cook Inlet, 20 knots from the north with a 5-foot sea, but watch for heavy freezing spray in these areas. In Shelikof Strait, 40 knots with a 12-foot sea, diminishing to 20 knots from the north with a 4-foot sea on Saturday. And northerlies kick in just about everywhere else also, with 20 to 30 knots across the north and western Gulf, 6 to 9-foot seas across the region there, 4-foot seas inside of Prince William Sound, and 7-foot seas across southern parts of Cook Inlet on that northerly flow. In the Bristol Bay region, northerlies at 20 knots over the ice. Down the coast, 25 knots with a 9-foot sea, and heavy freezing spray on either side of the peninsula at 25 knots with a 9-foot sea there. Northwesterlies from Castle Cape to Chignik with a 9-foot sea expected Friday. That diminishes to 8 feet. The northwesterlies continue there, but northeasterlies are found everywhere else down the Pacific coast and the Bering Sea coast, 20 to 30 with a 12-foot sea across the Bering Sea coast, again with heavy freezing spray on Saturday. For the Aleutians, north and easterly winds will rule the roost. Central and eastern parts of the islands looking at 35 to 40 knots with 13 to 15-foot seas in the Bering Sea coast and 13 to 20-foot seas across the Bering. An easterly wind will be found across regions from Kiska to Attu, 30 knots with a 15-foot sea on Friday. That turns a little bit more to the north and east on Saturday. Small change there west of Adak as well with 15-foot seas there for Saturday. Otherwise, northeasterlies 30 to 35 with 11 to 16-foot seas in the Bering, Pacific, and the 12 to 14-foot seas in the Bering as we go into Saturday. Now across the west coast, northerlies pushing the ice further southward, 20 to 30 knots in all areas with a northeasterly flow across St. Matthew and St. Paul and St. George. 9-foot seas expected there for your Friday. As we get into Saturday, 15 to 25 in all areas, still holding onto more of a northerly flow from the Kuskokwim Delta all the way up to St. Lawrence Island. St. Paul and St. George still looking at northeasterlies with a 9-foot sea on Saturday. And for the north coast, looking at westerlies moving across the Chukchi coast, 15 to 20 knots into Kotzebue Sound from the northwest, and southwesterly winds developing around Prudhoe Bay. Westerlies continue around Kaktovik and the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, but diminishing as we get into Saturday. You'll notice a southerly flow taking shape, 15 knots around the Beaufort, 10 knots around Point Barrow, and westerlies as you get from Wainwright all the way down into Kotzebue Sound. So some improving conditions perhaps there, but still awfully cold. Recapping tonight's weather, wind chill advisories continue for all the regions across the northern interior, the North Slope, and the Brooks Range, as well as northern parts of the Seward Peninsula and the Kuskokwim Delta. Down south, wind chill values there from 35 to 45 below through the weekend, and up north, they could be from 40 to 55 below. So bundle up and be careful. A winter storm watch is posted for Haines and Skagway, as well as areas just north of Juneau out toward on the northern coast, but for Yakutat and all the way into central and southern parts of southeast, many areas under a winter weather advisory now for accumulating snow. Some of that under 10 inches up north. That could be as much as 10 to 15. Snow will continue across south central, and blizzard conditions may develop in the Portage Valley, so traveling between Whittier and Anchorage, watch for worsening weather from tonight and into early Saturday morning. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.